Hey guys, this is MusicTechHelpGuy and welcome to part 13 of my pop rock mixing series in Logic Pro 10. In this video we're going to add reverb to our drums, some of the instruments, and our vocals using sends, buses, auxiliary channel strips, or as I'll be referring to them as aux tracks. If you'd like to practice mixing and work along with me, there's a link in the video description below where you can purchase and download this exact same multi-track session. Alright, so let's get started with the drums. Currently, this is what the drums sound like as is. I'm just sort of looping the third chorus here. So they sound good, and thank goodness we have this stereo room track here. These are two Royer R121 ribbon mics that were mic'd about 12 to 15 feet away from the kit. It gives us some nice room ambience, but I feel like I want a little bit more ambience, particularly from the snare. So just so you can hear this with and without the room track, here's no room. And as you can hear, as I pull up the room, you hear more and more of the room ambience. I just feel like I want a little bit longer, maybe like plate reverb on the snare, and maybe to a lesser extent on the toms. But overall, I want reverb on all of the drums to some extent, but just at varying levels. So if you've never done this before in this manner, you may think, oh, well, I'll just put I'll put Space Designer or whatever reverb plugin I'm using on every single channel, and then I adjust the amount of reverb in each one. You can do that, but you're wasting a lot of processing power doing that, because most likely you're going to be using the same type of reverb on the entire drum kit, which is optimally what you want to do. You don't want to have different types of reverb on the drums unless you're trying to do, unless you're trying to experiment with something and maybe it's electronic music as opposed to like a live drum kit, you might be able to get away with that. But for a live drum kit, we really want the same type of reverb on all the channels. So you'd think you'd want to do that. You're also, like I said, you're wasting processing power because you're putting a copy of Space Designer on all 12 channels or so. The better way to do this is just to create one auxiliary channel strip or aux track, put the reverb on that auxiliary channel strip, and then bus the signal from each of the drum tracks over to the aux track using our sends. So that's exactly what a send does. A send sends signal from whatever track you want over to an auxiliary channel strip. The other advantage to this is you separate your dry signal from the wet signal, so you can solo out just the aux track and just hear the reverb separately from the rest of the drum kit. So if you want to say pull all the reverb up on the drum kit, you just pull up that one auxiliary channel strip rather than having to pull up each individual reverb plugin. So that's that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to drag over all of our drum tracks, including the snaps, and we're going to go to our send insert here, whatever you want to call it. You can see it says sends right here. And you're going to click on that, and you're going to go down to bus. And we're going to choose a bus. So what's a bus? So I already talked about what a send was. A bus is the digital or analog pathway through which signal can travel. That's it. So imagine bus 1 is like a little wire connecting, like almost splitting each one of these tracks off of a separate wire over to an aux track. Now, one of the other cool things about Logic is that when you create a send, a bus on a send or even on an output, what it does is it automatically creates an auxiliary channel strip with that bus assignment. So as you can see, all of these channels are sending on bus 1, and this aux track is receiving on bus 1. Now, we're not going to hear anything on aux 1 over here yet. You can see it's blank. One, because we haven't pulled up the send amount. That's this little knob here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull all these up while I have them up. There we go. Another thing I'm going to do is, because I've got some stereo information in the drum kit and some panning and whatnot, I'm going to make sure that my bus is stereo. So you click on this little circle here and it switches it over to stereo. So now I have a stereo aux track. I'm going to double click on that and I'm going to call it drum verb. This is where our reverb is going to be. And now you can see we actually have signal on the aux track. So if I were to unsolo all these drums and just solo the drum verb, watch what happens. It's just basically playing the drums because we're splitting the signal off of these tracks and sending it over to the auxiliary channel strip. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to turn this into simply wet signal, just processed reverb signal. So I'm going to add an insert here, an effect. I'm going to go down to Reverb, and we're going to use Space Designer. It's an awesome reverb plugin in Logic. Honestly, it's worth the $200 that it costs for Logic alone, just for this one plugin. So notice that when you load Space Designer on an aux track, the dry signal is automatically all the way down at 0, which means that you're only hearing the reverb signal. So again, we're separating our dry signal from the reverb signal. Watch what happens when I press play now. You just hear the reverb signal. So let's choose a different preset that I want to use. I'm going to use medium spaces, plate reverbs, and I'll use the drum plate. And there we go. And I pulled up the reverb signal just a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on all of the dry drum tracks and sort of blend these two together. But the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to adjust the send amount on each one of these tracks. Like I said, I want to hear more reverb in the snare and the toms, maybe not so much in the kick drum. So on the kick tracks, we can pull the send amount down, and we're not going to send as much signal from these tracks over to the aux track, and therefore we won't hear as much kick drum reverb. So for the snares, I want a lot. For the toms, I want a lot. But maybe for the cymbal mics, I don't want quite as much. So let's pull that down a touch. Oops. There we go. Let's pull those down a touch. And then maybe for the snaps, I want to leave it up. So here's with everything in. Here's with the drum reverb out. Actually, I think we're still hearing it. Hang on. Let's just listen to this. Yeah, that's just our reverb signal. Let me actually try muting the aux track this time. Yeah, there you go. We won't really get into pre-fader versus post-fader and post-pan modes, but basically in this particular mode, if you solo out the dry channels, you'll actually still hear the reverb channel play. I actually had to go and mute it to get that to work. So again, here's no reverb, no added reverb whatsoever. And then with the reverb. And again, like I said before, this gives us individual control over the dry signal here and the wet signal here. So if I want to pull down the reverb overall in the drums, I just pull this one fader down. All right, so let's do the same for some of our instruments. Typically, what I try to do is I try not to have too many different types of reverb. And for my keys, for my guitar solo, not the synths, because the synths have their own reverbs. It's sort of part of their sound design. But for the guitar solo, the keys, the clean guitars, and the overdrive guitars, not the bass, I want to have a little bit of reverb going on. So let's just drag over all those instruments. Let's go to bus 2 this time, since bus 1's already being used. Pull up the send amount just a touch. Let's go over to the right side here. As you can see, it's created an aux track for us. I'll just call this INST for instrument verb. And let's go to Space Designer. And let's see, what verb do I want? I want sort of like I want a plate still. Let's try the soft plate. Let's see what that one sounds like. And all I'm going to do is just solo out the instrument verb. See what it sounds like with the guitar solo over here. Yeah, let's listen to all of the instruments, not all of them, but the ones that we sent over to the bus along with that aux track. That sounds cool. Let's go over to the bridge, or actually, let's go to the verse. Yeah, I don't want quite as much on the guitar, but on the clean guitars and the keys, we can have a little bit more. The overdrive guitars, I want a little bit less. So that actually sounds pretty good. Let's listen to it with everything in the mix there. Let's just go right before the guitar solo here.
Just like animals, non-sensical, you keep stealing up my heart. We're just so magical, this tragedy keeps running through my heart.
Yeah, the only thing I did there is I pulled down the sort of the decay of the reverb, just using the volume envelope, just to make it decay a little bit faster. It just seems to ring at full volume for just a little bit longer than I want it to. All right, so that sounds cool. Let's go ahead and do the same thing for our vocals. So drag over all the vocals, go to sends, bus, we use bus 3, and I love how Logic actually labels where the buses are going to, so that's pretty cool. Let's pull all these up a bit. There we go. Let's go over to the bottom of the mixer here. We'll call this Vox Verb, and the setting I want to use, let's go under Space Designer again here. Oh, hang on, I'm gonna make this stereo. There we go. Sometimes it automatically makes it stereo, sometimes it doesn't. So just watch out for that. So use Space Designer, and the one I want to use, I believe it's called like shimmering plate or something like that. Yeah, it's under large spaces, plate reverbs, shimmering plate. And let's just solo the verb, and let's see what this sounds like. Let's hear it with the all the vocals in.
You stole the magic from my heart. I wanna say to you, just wanna see this through. I wanna say it to you, baby. Don't ever tear us down. I wanna say to you, just wanna see this through.
Cool. I am gonna pull down the length a little bit. It was up in the 5-second range. Now it's down the 3.7 second range. It's just a little too long for my taste.
I wanna hear it.
Yeah. So now, I mean, it's still got that little echoing, that cool echoing tail, but it doesn't have quite as long of a decay time. All right. So let's hear everything in the mix. We'll start toward the bridge here.
Never tear us down. I wanna say to you, just wanna see this through. I wanna hear it from you, baby. Don't ever let me down. We're just so magical. This tragedy keeps running through my heart. We're just like animals, nonsensical. You keep running through my heart. We're just so magical. This tragedy keeps running through my heart.
All right, cool. So, yeah, it really helps to just fill out the mix. I mean, if we were to go and mute these just real quick to A/B this one more time, this is no added reverb.
Running through my heart. We're just so magical. This tragedy keeps.
It sounds good, but it's kind of flat sounding. It doesn't have like a fullness to it, you know? The mix doesn't really truly fill the space. If you unmute these,
We're just so magical. This tragedy keeps running through my heart. We're just like animals.
just the reverb alone sort of gives it more, obviously space, but it just fills the space better and gives it more depth. So even if you don't like noticeably hear the reverb, you notice when you take it away. And that's one of my rules about reverb too, is if someone has to say, oh man, you've got some really cool reverb there, I usually say, well, that probably means I have too much reverb, you know. If you take the reverb away and they notice it, good, you know. But if you really notice the reverbs there, I usually think it's too much reverb. So one thing I I'm gonna do is pull everything in the mix down, because it looks like we're as we add more and more stuff to the mix, our stereo out is slowly starting to clip. So just pulled everything down a touch again. All right, so that's it for reverb. In the next video, we are going to add chorus and delay to the vocals, and even further thicken those up. And then in the video after that, we'll get into bussing our groups of instruments together and creating submixes or submasters, so that we can process each group of instruments as a unit. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching. Hey guys, if you'd like to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel to see multiple new videos added every week. Also, you can check out carneymediagroup.com, where you can view all of my video tutorials, search for specific topics, download the videos ad-free, and in some cases you can purchase session content so you can work along with me in the video. Also, please consider giving a monthly contribution at patreon.com/MusicTechHelpGuy. As always, thanks for your support and thanks for watching.